So I've had some people that expressed some concern as to how the tank sits up in the car. Right now I have the Toyota Camry tank in here, and as you can see, the tank doesn't hang down. The lowest point is going to be your exhaust, which, if you know, the factory exhaust bends down at that little spot where it does come down and out this way. So that is the factory height of the exhaust. So that is your lowest point, and that's from factory. So nothing really you can do about that unless you completely redo the exhaust. This does have the Camry exhaust on it also, since that tank takes up that void where the exhaust goes through. I'll put this up on my ramps and I'll crawl under there and show you a little bit more. As you see, my vacuum tank that I made for the Corolla tank is just relocated because I no longer have that little void for it to go up in, but I'll show you a little bit more detail once we get underneath it. Alright, so factory Camry exhaust, I cut right here so then that way I could use this elbow to plumb it like I want, but I needed to rotate it because on the Camry you have independent rear suspension, so this cross member gets in the way, or else it would tuck up right in the tunnel of where the original Camry exhaust would go. And then I just used another section of the Camry pipe that's got a little bend to it to get it back over to center where the Prius exhaust comes in, and I used a little 1.5 to a 2-inch exhaust coupler to go in there. And obviously there's a ton of air gap, so no need to run a shield. As I said before, all my gas tanks are coming from a junkyard, so they puncture holes in it, so that is a repair job. As you can see, like I said earlier, I moved the clean air system over here underneath the, I guess you'd call it a jack point or whatever, but I just bolted it to that. I again put the EVAP tucked up in the same factory location. The filler neck, took the Camry filler neck tube and just cut off the Prius tank or filler neck and then hose clamped it. I mean, it was real simple. I did, however, cut this shorter than I would have liked to have, because from factory these do come out and tilt just a little bit more. I wish I would have left myself some because this is pretty stretched and I don't like it. I do have another filler neck that I took off the Prius that I got the tank that I stole the sensors and grommets and all that stuff from. I may put that filler neck on, and that way I can relieve some of that stress. I mean, for the most part, that's it. I did extend the wires for the controller because they were going to be too short. I need to move my wiring back up in there, but I did loom it, and this is where I did my extension from the factory harness. I also did have to extend the vapor pressure sensor. No, I didn't. It was only the temperature sensor, yeah, that I had to extend, and that's kind of tucked up in that little void. But I would like to make a more aesthetically a pleasing tank that would sit up in here, and that way we don't have this jalopy sitting here dangling. But that's down the road. But like I said, I'm already close to 400 miles in on this tank, and the gas gauge seems to be reading correctly. It's only showing about a little over half a tank left. I did have about a gallon of gas spillage due to where that screw is. I had a fiberglass patch there and it was leaking, and I'd already filled up the tank like a numbskull, and so just put that screw in there because I had already tapped the holes that were there anyways, just in case I needed to use a screw to plug it. And so I just ran that screw in there and the epoxy set up around it and sealed it. So I'm going to leave it for now. So when I was fixing that, I assumed that I had lost probably a gallon of fuel. So I'm going to take that into consideration. I am going to run this tank completely dry and then refuel and see what I get as far as you know, what a tank will get me for travel. I did use the stock Prius tank straps to hold this in. I do need to put in some foam or something to go in here because this is sunk up, and I mean the strap is still tight against the edge since this tank is got more depth, so it does wedge it in there and it keeps it secure. And the driver's side strap is really tight. It was kind of a pain to get the bolt up in there on both sides, but it's in there, it's secure, it ain't going nowhere. The biggest thing that I don't like about this right now is where that white cover is where the main voltage lines for your high voltage system goes through. And so it goes right up there and the tank is against it. So I don't like that, but there's rubber grommets and all kinds of other stuff to protect it. So I'm not too concerned with it, but if I get this tank out again, I'm going to bash in that area with a 2x4 and a hammer, so then that way it isn't up against it. Another thing I ran into when putting this tank in, the little covers for your, I mean, really they're just decorative, covering the control arm and allowing some air to travel around your control arm. But the e-brake cables and those got in the way of getting the tank up into the cavity, so I had to loosen up the two spots on each side where the cable goes, and of course I had to cut the exhaust. But in order to get this tank up in there, you had to do that, as well as the pinch weld, or the weld seam that goes around the two halves of the tank. On, you can kind of see it down at the very end. I had to bend those down in order to get it to snake up in there. And then it also gave me some more clearance for that plastic, as well as just the other side. And then, I mean, really for the most part, that was it. That was the biggest challenge. I didn't realize that these were going to be so much in the way, but they were. So removing those, drop your lines, drop your exhaust, bend those little deals, make your vacuum tank, make your lines, extend those couple of wires, cut that dude, that's the majority of stuff that you would have to do to get a Camry tank up in here. And with it being 18 gallons, I should get in the neighborhood of 800 to 860 miles on a tank. But we'll see. But that's it in a nutshell. So enjoy. Something else I kind of want to harp on a little bit is if you're having trouble with your gas gauge, a lot of the videos and stuff that I was finding was basically the inclination meter reset procedure that people are toting as the fix to reset your gas gauge. That is incorrect. This only resets your inclination meter that tells your Prius whether it's sitting on level ground, side to side, to and fro. The biggest problem with this that does not get addressed in this here is in the technician service bulletin or technical service bulletin for the gas gauge diagnostics. Now, whenever that procedure is done, it has to be on some really level surface. It needs to be on a surface that is no more than, I think it was 3 minutes from absolute level. I can't remember where I saw that, but I know it was in here somewhere. And once I saw that, I was like, so everybody's been, there it is, important information. Yeah, on a very level surface, plus or minus 3 minutes of a degree, front, back, side to side. So if you're resetting that on unlevel surface, you're messing up your inclination meter, which is going to throw off your gas gauge, because the way this works is your sending unit from your fuel tank goes into, because your sender's inside the pump, inside the tank. That sends a signal to a separate control module that then takes that information along with the air temperature or the ambient air temperature inside of your fuel tank, which is also inside of this pump, and the inclination meter, which is up underneath your dash, if I'm not mistaken, and takes those three factors and then figures out where your fuel level is. So if you're resetting your inclination meter, you're throwing it all out of whack unless you're on that level of a surface, which most places are not going to have that much of a level surface, especially driveways. So just words to wise. If you're going to reset your gas gauge system, you actually just need to either disconnect your main power for 10 seconds or the number 15 fuse or a 15 amp fuse in slot number 39 underneath your hood. That's the best way to reset your system. But you also need to check and verify that your sending unit, pins 6 and 5, have a resistance that matches the pip level versus the resistance. If none of these match up, then you need to reset your system. If not, then you've got some other trouble going on. So unhook your power or just pull your plug, measure between, note how many bars you have on your gas gauge when you unhook it, check the resistance against it, and if those match, then you've got another problem. But I just wanted to touch on that a little bit because that was something I found out when doing my research and thought that was information that people don't really know, and they just keep resetting their inclination meter wondering why nothing's really changing. And also it could make it, worse. But that's that. So with all of that being said and done, thanks for watching. If there's more information or things that you would like to see or have questions about, just reach out. I'd be happy to help if I can. But other than that, stay safe, enjoy, and have a good one.